Hey guys, so we've taken a look at almost all of the X570 motherboards on display at Computex this year. There's just one booth left to check out, and that's ASRock. So some of you have been asking my thoughts on the new X570 ITX motherboard that they've got here, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And we're also going to be checking out some of their graphics card prototypes, which are almost certainly going to be for AMD's new RX 5700 GPUs. In fact, these might even be the 5700 GPUs on the show floor, but more on that later. But first, a huge thanks to MSI for making this Computex trip possible this year. You can check out their entire range of their latest X570 motherboards for gamers and creators in the link in the description. So to start things off, let's first look at their RTX X570 offering, which they're calling the Phantom Gaming X570 ITX TB3, where TB3 indicates that this board is fitted with Thunderbolt 3. Now, the Phantom Gaming branding indicates that this will likely carry some premium features. Thankfully, they just haven't left this ITX board for the budget end of the stack. Alright, so overall the build quality of this board looks quite nice. Most of the shroud covers are metal, but the one thing that I absolutely do not like about this board is that the fact that the I/O shroud extends so high and so close to the socket. Now, this shouldn't be a problem if you're just water cooling and using a normal sized pump head, and honestly most of you probably will be if you're going to be throwing an 8-core Ryzen 3700X or higher onto this board. But if you are going to be air cooling, there is a big chance you could run into some compatibility issues. Not only that, but the V-Core VRM and heatsink sit directly underneath that I/O shroud, meaning that VRM cooling could be potentially pretty bad. Now, the VRM on this board is supposedly a 6+2 phase, although I do count 10 chokes in total, meaning that it could be a doubled 4+2. I did catch a glimpse of the PWM controller here, which is the ISL 69147, which supports up to 7 PWM phases, so there is likely some phase doubling going on here. Another thing about this board which has caught some attention is the fact that it actually supports Intel's LGA 11.5X cooler mounting, so potentially if you wanted to use an Intel cooler or mounting bracket for your Ryzen CPU, you could actually do that. Now, the other thing that stands out on this board is the mini fan and heatsink that's mounted at a 45-degree angle, and it looks like they've done that to avoid conflicts with the CPU cooler mounting. Honestly though, it does extend pretty close to the CPU socket and quite high as well, so it might probably still get in the way. As far as I know, that's where the single M.2 drive is going to be mounted underneath. The heatsink is likely attached to the chipset as well. The I/O on this board unfortunately sucks, and I'm just going to say it. A total of 4 USB-A ports for rear I/O is just not enough. Although we do get that Thunderbolt 3 port and Wi-Fi 6, which is a nice bonus, but again, the mainstream consumer is going to be looking for at least 6 to 8 USB-A ports, and here 4 really just is not enough. Now, some of you guys asked me on my thoughts on which ITX X570 board I'd personally recommend for a 3rd gen Ryzen system, and so far that is the ASUS X570i Strix. I unfortunately didn't get much footage of this one, seeing as it was hidden away in a corner, but this is the only ITX X570 motherboard to feature active cooling for the VRM, and that's going to be seriously important, seeing as these boards will support up to a 16-core 32-thread CPU. And upon further reading, I'm pretty sure that this board will feature the best VRM. Although I'm estimating this one to be a doubled 4-phase for the V-Core VRM, you are still getting 8 power stages in total instead of the 6 that you'll find on the Aorus and the ASRock ITX. You guys know I'm pretty hyped for the ROG Impact 8 because it's seriously insane, but it is technically mini DTX and pricing and availability might not be in our favor. So with this in mind, the X570i Strix is what I'd recommend to set your eyes on for now if you are looking for an ITX X570 motherboard. Of course, do stay tuned for the full review on that one before pulling the trigger. And now let's take a quick look at the Navi GPU coolers. ASRock are showing off 3 different designs here for what we believe are the AMD RX 5700 GPUs. The PCBs here use 2 8-pin power connectors, so we can estimate these GPUs to be above 200 watts TDP based on what we've previously seen. All of the coolers here are a triple fan design, and where ASRock previously made cards for the RX 580 and below GPUs, they are now exploring cooling options for higher power options. So let me know your thoughts on these ones down below. Personally, I really like the plain black and white Phantom Gaming model. That one really has some tasteful RGB illumination near the shroud and also on the backplate. The Tai Chi card looks alright as well, and this one had RGB illumination around the middle fan. In terms of some other X570 motherboards that they had on display, because they did have a ton, they had the only micro ATX model on the show floor, which was the Pro 4M, the affordable Phantom Gaming 4, and they had the Steel Legend, which honestly looks pretty clean. That one should be aimed towards the mainstream, so it'll be interesting to see how it performs. For those wanting a bit more, you've got the X570 Creator, the X570 Tai Chi, and the big boy, the X570 Aqua, which includes a full onboard monoblock for the CPU, VRM, and chipset cooling. It's an epic design, but just expect to pay a pretty penny for this one. So that concludes our coverage for ASRock, and now that we've seen the majority of X570 motherboards on the show floor, I'd love to know your thoughts on them down below. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching, consider subscribing down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.